rather than to divide, I would say, in relation to the previous talk. So Bohm on dialogue says that the picture or image that this derivation suggests is of a stream of meaning flowing among and through us and between us. This will make possible a flow of meaning in the whole group, out of which may emerge some new understanding. It's something new which may not have been in the starting point at all. It's something creative. And this shared meaning is the glue or the cement that holds people and societies together. So what are ways of speaking, ways of moving through words that hold us together rather than risk dividing us? So I would like to pierce through, or perhaps weave through, stitch through, amble through, live into, love into, and each of these carry different elements and different strengths of transgression and of holding together at the same time. What you said, Thomas, in particular, the picture of the human that has set the scene here, and to do so with some different ideas, images, moves, and movements, to end up also at human bodily, persons always in relation, always bodily. And I would like to tell it slant, if you like. To pierce, to weave, to stitch through, slant. To live and to love into at an angle, from a different perspective, with different motives and experiences, needs and constraints. From living bodies, moving through the world, shot through with vulnerability. Quoting David Bowie on imagination, he has a subtle, generative idea of what imagination is. He says it's not fantasy, something we make up in a sense, but rather imagination is a way to understand the affinities of something and have those affinities illuminate a subject. When you say, Thomas, when you ask if there is a way out of the vacillation between Pascal's idea of greatness and misery of man, and you propose therapy for narcissistic personalities and narcissistic society, you mention all these things, taking leave of the fantasies of omnipotence and greatness and so on, the recognition of one's own dependence, but not then upon empty admiration, but upon real relationships and so on. I wonder, how does vulnerability stream through this? Or what about vulnerability in all of this? I think it's a central theme. The narcissist, and we see it playing out in the world stage these days, harshly, the narcissist is hard and brittle at the same time. For their utter vulnerability, they compensate with extreme hardness, with lashing out, with dominating, with controlling over there, controlling and dominating anything or anybody other, without any sense of the intervulnerability of people as they meet, as they relate, and as they do things together. I think there's some sense of vulnerability in the narcissist deep down, and the extreme hardness of their actions and reactions reflects this. But there's no awareness of this vulnerability that actually helps them relate. And thus, in relating is their fragility. Something fragile can break, but something vulnerable can die, and therefore lives. Or something vulnerable lives and can therefore die. What runs through the therapy for narcissism, or what its eventual aim is, it seems to me, is to place a person back into relation with others, where the vulnerabilities of being a living being, living, are lived again, experienced again, moved through life with again, without this leading to the destruction of both one's own and any other's vulnerability. So when you say, Thomas, the transhumanist disdain for the human body and life in favor of the pure spirit gives us clues, I think that referencing trans and post-humanism and the intellectual historical line of thought, the school of ideas that it comes from, is a kind of going with that, carrying that forward. And in terms of the imagination, a la David Bowie, we can ask if this appeal to a lineage of thought, and thereby actual actions in the world, what affinities are carrying forward in referencing it. even while proposing something else, the world is still set up, the worldview is set up, engaged with, moved with, taken as a reference point, a starting point. It's brought forward that is dualistic, divisive, irreconcilable between greatness and misery, to speak with Pascal. What if it were different? What if we didn't start building up the idea of the human, bodily relational being from such a place? This place, which is, after all, a quite localized Western European, though undoubtedly forcefully influential set of images, ideas, and experiences. A worldview, and one that has been dominant as such, as ways of thinking and actioning on and co-determining the world. Then I think there is a relationship when we try to think about understanding each other and understanding the world between loving and knowing. And I have to define that in some of my writing, but I think piercing through the narcissist and their therapy is an idea of loving and knowing, understood in this way, that when we relate to something, try to understand something, we always relate to it from an existential dialectic of relating to it in terms of what we need, our deepest human needs, in terms of what matters to us as living beings for our survival. And this is always tensionful, and between over and under determination. We are always, when we are understanding something, moving between risking over-determining it from our presuppositions or under-determining it by maybe having too much respect for it. So we cannot but over or under-determine and navigate these things when we are interacting with things and trying to know them. We always do that, and being aware of that means that we can be careful with it. As well, vulnerable in this mutual, reciprocal co-determining, we are vulnerable, but this vulnerability allows us to live with one another across differences instead of breaking in the face of each other. And there are caring and responsibilities in all of this. And we can refer to Kim McLaren's idea of ontological intimacy, or the inevitable transgressions that we always make to each other, as she says. She's a Canadian philosopher in Toronto. The other is not first and foremost represented by us, but touches us, moves us, inhabits and is inhabited by us. And in a way, presenting the argument as you do, Thomas, referring to trans and post-humanists and the Western European lineage, balancing between, with Pascal, the greatness and misery of man, we are left hanging there. We are not free from these ideas, and in fact both represent them, but we are also mainly moved by them. This way of thinking is invited to keep moving us, moving through us, and we move through and with it in referencing it. But this being moved by these kinds of theories is not the only possibility. We could be moved by African knowledge systems, Black feminism, by liberation theology, by indigenous epistemologies, by relational, processual, and enactive approaches and lineage of thought. And I would say that this is more worth being moved by at this point directly, and in fact needed. And there are many thinkers working in this vein, as many people here know. And so as linguistic bodies, we move through language, and language moves through us. We weave meanings, and meanings are woven out of how we move in language. And the ways of speaking that we address, that we reference, that we fight with, that we think through, and that we allow in and through our actions, our ways of speaking, our concepts, and our experiences and our determinations make our world, and so we have to be careful with them. And so I leave you with a final image. Beautiful, not of my colleague Elena Profari, who points out, in reference again to the imagination of David Bowie's and understanding affinities and what they illuminate for us, decentering means able to resist.